Do you know what allows professionals to consistently take trophy deer year after year? They don't just wait for them, they bring them in. Now, you can do the same with the Extinguisher Deer Calling System by Illusion. The Extinguisher reproduces the full range of white-tailed deer vocalizations. You'll recreate the fawn, doe, or buck in an instant. Illusion's patented Monoslide technology, found exclusively on the Extinguisher, glides up and down the reed assembly, giving it the wide range of tone and volume unmatched by any other call on the market. Bleats, bawls, groans, growls, and roars, grunts, pops, and more. Don't miss out on a chance to bag that trophy buck this year.
Rod White's an Olympic gold and bronze medalist in archery. Rod's been instrumental in the field testing and designing of the Extinguisher deer calling system. Let's go see what Rod has to say about the Extinguisher.
In the past, I used to have to carry several different calls with me. I'd have 2 different types of grunt tubes, I'd have a can with me, all these different types of calls. And at the end of the day, the Monoslide has become one of the single most important elements that I have in my arsenal with me when I'm in the tree. And it's mostly because I can use it to communicate with deer on a different level without having to change from one call to the other call and produce a different sound. I can literally change in an instant from a mature buck to an immature buck, back to a mature buck, and then create a long breeding grunt. And even if I need to, create a fawn ball or a doe bleat, whatever the scenario is, because each and every day I'm going to experience different types of calling scenarios in the woods because deer are in different moods at different times of the rut. Even within the same day, you may have a buck that comes by that's extremely aggressive and I need to do one thing with a call, and the next moment a shooter shows up that I suddenly have to make a completely different environment for him or create a simulated environment in order to get him into bow range. And that Monoslide is clearly the ticket to being able to have the versatility I need when I need it. You know, not even from a convenience perspective, but from a value perspective, before I would buy a handful of calls, drop $100 easy on a calling system. Now that I've got all the calling system into one item, not only do I have the convenience of just carrying one item in the field with me that's extremely effective, it's only a fraction of the cost. So instead of spending $100 on calls every year, now I just buy one call, and it's the Extinguisher. You know, I've been so very fortunate to experience a lot as a professional bow hunter and even as an Olympic gold medalist. Through that experience, I've obviously gotten to interact with a lot of mature deer over time, and there's no doubt that the animals that are growing up on my wall now are at a class way above and beyond what I ever thought they would be. Since using the Extinguisher in the past couple years, I've literally added over 8 bucks to my wall that are all over 180 plus inches, including 2 that were over 200. The last year I was fortunate enough to be able to harvest was a 220-inch monster, and all of it is directly related to my usage and the ability to be able to communicate with deer with the Extinguisher call. I don't get a dime for this endorsement. I truly enjoy helping people reach the level of success or fulfill their dreams, whatever those may be in the woods, and that's why I do what I do, and that's quite honestly why I'm here today talking to you about the Extinguisher call, because it's an item you have to have in your pocket if you truly want to consistently harvest mature bucks.
One of the first professional deer hunters ever to field test and use the Extinguisher was the late Gabe Schaffner. Now, Gabe shot over 5,000 inches of Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young deer throughout his career. Every year he would send us photos and tell us stories about how he used the system to harvest his bucks. And last year was no different. In fact, his last few years of using the Extinguisher, Gabe shot some of the biggest deer of his career. So let's take a look and see what Gabe has had to say about the Extinguisher.
The very first year I used this thing, I killed a monster. Should have been Boone and Crockett buck. Had a flyer on him that cost him from making Boone and Crockett as far as score-wise. I use this call because it done away with about 3 other calls that I carry. I used to carry a can, I used to carry a doe bleat and a regular grunt tube. This call alone goes into my pouch in my little side pocket where it's handy. I can slip my hand in and get it. I don't promote stuff that I don't believe in, but this is one call that has worked for me.
Sam Calora is the owner of Mrs. Dopey's Buck Lure. Now, Sam's around deer every single day of his life, and Sam understands how deer communicate both through scent and verbally. Now, Sam's also shot one of the largest typical whitetails in history. Let's see what Sam's got to say about the realism of the extinguisher.
If the extinguisher didn't sound like my real deer, I wouldn't be standing here having this conversation or talking about it. It's a great call, it works, it makes the right sounds. Sounds like a real deer. That might be just a statement, but I live with deer. I know what they sound like, I study deer. I've done seminars all over the country on whitetail body language, how to use it to harvest your deer, how to use scents and lures. I also use calls, and I know what deer sound like. The thing really works. We've gone from watching deer walk across the field and go out of sight to controlling where they go and bringing them to us and having the opportunity to at least view the buck better. And, and if he's the right buck, put the hammer on him.
When it comes to calling in deer, most people think of buck grunting. Well, in this next clip, we're going to show you how effective it can be by using doe bleats to bring that big buck in.
Literally for me, I'm using a call almost on a daily basis and communicating with deer regardless of the phase of the rut. So it's very important to identify right away or as quickly as possible what type of mood or temperament that deer's in. In this example, it's only one of dozens that we encounter throughout the season, literally. This buck walks into a field and I hit him with a couple contact grunts, which is typically how I start any of my calling sequences. Once I hit him with a couple of those grunts and I can start to perceive that really it's obvious he's been on the run most of the day chasing does. He's probably been around several other bucks. It's a little bit later in the season and more than likely there's multiple bucks on one doe that he's been dealing with throughout the entire day. So when I was grunting towards him, and after I could acknowledge that he actually heard the grunts, I could tell that he's been messing with a bunch of other bucks throughout the day. So I shifted my grunts to a breeding grunt, which signified that I was actually a buck breeding a doe, and he stopped just for a second, somewhat acknowledged me and moved on again. So the next call that I hit was I just slid the Monoslide down and made an actual doe call or a bleat. It was clearly all that he needed to know that there was definitely a doe down over the hill that was being bred, and that's what drew him directly to the stand. And it's obvious, you can tell exactly when that call's hit. When it hits his eardrums, he knows instantly that that's the time to come on over and check out to look for the girlfriend he's been after all day. Even though this is one of dozens of scenarios that played out for us that fall and each and every day during the hunting season, it shows how critically important it is to be able to slide that Monoslide and imitate different genders as well as different age structures of deer that you're trying to communicate with.
A few years ago, a gentleman named Andy Orr shot one of the country's largest whitetails. Last year, Andy used the extinguisher deer calling system, so let's take a look and see how it worked for him.
Well, the extinguisher allows you to become the deer you need to become to force a buck to come and investigate. I challenge you to get out there, get your extinguisher in your hand, and start communicating with mature bucks, start controlling their behavior, and put them where you need them to be to get a great shot. I mean, there's nothing as satisfying as calling a buck over and then putting an arrow through him. Having been in the woods and hunted in southern Iowa a long time, I've been fortunate enough to hear a lot of bucks grunt, a lot of does bleat. And we know these sounds, they become, just second nature to you. It has that tremendous realistic sound. It sounds exactly like a whitetail, and the benefit to you of that is you don't ever have to worry about calling with an extinguisher and spooking a deer. In the old days, some of the older deer calls I had, I can remember blowing a deer call and deer just snapping their head up, just blow and run, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna use a deer call in my life. But you don't have to worry about that with the extinguisher. It's a tremendously effective call with total realism. I make my living helping Advanced Whitetail Systems clients kill the biggest deer on their farms. I got to film Mike Arp killing a great buck over a decoy, Rod White killing a giant 21 pointer. I mean, it was extremely successful to see the call in action and be able to use it and see how repeatable and quick it is. It's one of the last things I check and make sure in my backpack that I've got an extinguisher with me before I head out, because it's absolutely necessary for controlling deer and putting them in a position where you can get a shot. One of the major patterns we focus on at Advanced Whitetail Systems is what we call October kill windows. Basically what happens is you'll get big storm fronts coming down, usually from the northwest, and they'll cause a major wind shift. And when that wind shifts, immediately that buck is at a disadvantage, because now he's laying on the end of a ridge, with the wind at his back, and all of a sudden that wind switches, now it's in his face. He's got to get on his feet. And when we first saw him, he was hooking around those ridges. I started laying out a scenario like there was an immature buck and a doe just up the hill from him. He eased in closer to about 40 yards straight downwind of us and put his nose in the air and was searching, trying to smell the doe or the buck or any danger. and then he eased off back down the hill real slow and kind of started to circle us, and I thought, well, he's going to circle all the way around us and come in, and I chose not to call at that time because he's already moving closer. Well, then he held up, at which point I realized I need to do something. I need to encourage him and coax him just a little bit further, try and control his behavior. I grunted like an immature buck once and then grunted like a doe, and you can see on the video he just immediately just snapped him out, just popped him out of his trance. He grunted back at me and came right up the hill and gave me a perfect 25-yard shot. Just amazing. You know, absolutely just the extinguisher showing its true colors, communicating and controlling deer behavior. I worked the buck for probably 6 or 7 minutes on video. Incredible experience to communicate with him and control his behavior like that as he drifted in and out of heavy cover. This buck is a perfect example of why I take an extinguisher deer call with me every time I go bow hunting. I consider it to be a massive advantage in the woods.
Coming up next is some of the most incredible footage you're ever going to see. It's live real-time communication with a 170-inch buck. You're not going to want to miss this.
The extinguisher reproduces the full range of white-tailed deer vocalizations. You'll recreate the fawn, doe, or buck in an instant. Most calls must be taken apart to change sounds, but the extinguisher allows you to make quick adjustments in the heat of the moment when you don't have time to waste. Why risk spooking game with a locked-up reed or unnatural notes produced by other calls? The extinguisher's precision monoslide guarantees you a perfect note every time without any guesswork. The extinguisher's flexible throat tube will produce incredibly natural sounds that even the most intelligent bucks cannot resist. Most ordinary grunt tubes and can-style calls make just one basic note. The extinguisher gives you the ability to produce countless combinations of communication vocalizations. Sound like one specific deer or an entire herd of deer with a flick of a finger. You've made unexpected sounds that have spooked deer in the past. Don't let that happen again. The extinguisher works only when you want it to work. Hundreds of independent field testers from the North American Hunting Club gave the extinguisher deer calling system an unprecedented 99.6% approval rating. Has your deer call ever locked up during that crucial moment from ice or excess moisture? Not anymore. Illusion's Monoslide feature allows you to free that stuck reed in a flash and with minimal movement. Illusion's patented Monoslide technology, found exclusively on the extinguisher, glides up and down the reed assembly, giving it the wide range of tone and volume unmatched by any other call on the market. Bleats, balls, groans, growls and roars, grunts, pops, and more. Order now while supplies last and get the extinguisher deer calling system by Illusion with free breakaway lanyard for just $29.99 plus shipping and handling. Get unparalleled performance at just a fraction of the cost. Order now, and you'll also receive Illusion's in-depth instructional DVD seminar featuring Olympic gold medal archer Rod White. In this hour-long communication clinic, you'll learn how to produce each and every deer vocalization on your extinguisher deer call. This incredible DVD also features live deer footage to demonstrate each piece of the deer language. In addition, Illusion and the Schaffner family would like to offer you the late Gabe Schaffner's World-Class Whitetails DVD seminar. In this commemorative DVD, legendary bow hunter Gabe Schaffner shares the hunting secrets that have allowed him to harvest over 5,000 antler inches of record book whitetails throughout his deer hunting career. This world-class whitetails seminar is not available anywhere else. But hold on, we're not done yet. While supplies last, we'll include a free, unscented wind checker. Know exactly where your scent is traveling at all times when calling in that mature buck. This $100 value is yours for just $29.99 plus shipping and handling. The extinguisher deer calling system makes the perfect gift for friends and family. Wouldn't it feel good knowing you helped a special someone harvest that trophy of a lifetime? The extinguisher is not a mass-produced product. It is a handcrafted deer calling system that is 100% made in the USA. Quantities will be limited for this season. Get yours now.
When it comes to field testing, video can really work to your advantage. We handed out a bunch of extinguishers to the guys at Real Hunting. So let's take a look and see what their field test results came out to be.
In promoting our DVD, we go to a lot of the major deer shows across the Midwest. I actually met Mike at a deer show in Minneapolis, It was the first time I'd ever seen, and I'd never used the extinguisher call before. He gave us a few to try and to use and said if you don't like it, you don't have to use it, and we've used it ever since. It's the best, by far the most versatile and best grunt call we have ever used. As bow hunters, we take a lot of calls into the woods with us, and a lot of times you have to have several calls that make different noises. And you know how that always works out. It's more stuff in your pack, more times you have to grab something else, and more noise you're making. With the extinguisher call, it makes the real call. It sounds exactly like a whitetail. You can go all the way from a fawn or up to an aggressive buck. You don't have to mess around with grabbing several calls because you want your hands to be free and make the shot. There is no doubt in my mind last year when I made the call with the extinguisher, I got a response from that deer unlike any response I've ever got. I called with the extinguisher. There was no doubt it wasn't chance that that deer walked up the trail. He heard what he thought was another buck, and he came in and he died. As any deer hunter knows, you spend a lot of money on a lot of products that they really don't work, or you do not get a response out of a whitetail. I can tell you right now, you're gonna get more than your money's worth out of the extinguisher. And you're probably thinking that this thing is gonna cost $50, $60, $70, $80. You're gonna be surprised what it costs. And what's it worth to you for something that actually and truly works? It's the only call we use when we're in the woods. I'm just gonna tell you right now, the extinguisher is not just another call that you drag into the woods. It's a necessity. It's something, if you haven't tried it, you probably don't believe me. It's something that you have to try.
Now let's take a look at some real-time communication with Rod's 170-inch Giant.
On this hunt, we were hunting in some really heavy cover, which is where most of the vocalization communication occurs on a lot of the farms that we hunt. This buck was following a hot doe across a ridge in some really heavy cover whenever we identified him as a potential shooter. The first couple grunts that I gave this buck was strictly what I call contact grunts. It was only to let him know that I was another buck that was in the area that had the potential for following his doe as well. Those first few contact grunts did more than just acknowledge to him that there was another deer in the area. It actually angered him, possibly because the doe that he was following was either not quite receptive or there may have been multiple does in the area that were receptive. The easiest way to identify that anger is by looking at the hair on his back. When you see the shadowing start to occur along the length of the back, that indicates the hair is raising up on his back, and you'll see his ears start to pin back towards the back of his body. In the next series of calls I did, I threw in a snort wheeze. This was to show that I had aggression towards him. This is where the questioning process, in his mind at least, will begin, to where he thinks maybe this isn't just a buck following a doe, this may be a more dominant buck that either came in from another farm or a more aggressive buck that he's tangled with earlier in the season. Adding a doe bleat will only add to the realism that there's a very strong possibility that there is a buck tending a doe just over the hill or out of sight of that deer. Again, this is where heavy cover really makes it beneficial to be carrying a grunt call with you. The next series of grunts that you'll hear me do are long drawn out breeding grunts. These are sounds that are typically only made whenever a buck is following a doe that is in heat and actually willing to breed. I'll use these grunts in very specific areas like breeding rooms or in heavy cover like we're sitting in today. When you see deer start to use behavior like rubbing trees or making scrapes, those are sure signs that you're communicating with that deer and he's beginning to understand that you are definitely another deer in the area and he's made a commitment that he's going to show some kind of dominance to you. In most cases, he's usually committed to come to your stand, but that isn't always the case. One behavior you're really going to want to be aware of whenever you're in a heavy calling sequence like this is to watch his lips to see if he's actually licking them with his tongue. This isn't for any other reason other than to add moisture to his nose, which will help him identify which deer you may be in his social structure. If you ever have any doubt that the buck may begin to be skirting to get downwind of you, one of the things you can do is get more aggressive again with a snort wheeze. This communication will serve the purpose that even though you're focused on breeding a doe, you now recognize that he is also in your area and you're going to become aggressive towards him to defend your right to breed that doe. Once you see behavior like the scraping and the rubbing activity, you can move into the breeding grunts. Those long breeding grunts are going to simulate that I am actually not just in fact a deer that's over the hill or an aggressive deer that's over the hill that may be of a similar age structure, but most importantly that I am breeding a doe or in the process of breeding the doe right now. And that's something that most mature bucks simply can't resist. It was our silhouettes against the skyline that caught him off guard. You'll see his behavior switch almost instantly after he looks in the tree as he decides it's time for him to leave. Since he hasn't identified the buck, he's convinced that he's either not there or he's been duped before by another hunter. It was at this point we decided that with all the great footage that we had so far, we couldn't let this deer walk out of our lives. Understanding how to effectively communicate with deer in a variety of environments is really the key to consistent success, especially during the months of late October and into early November.
TV celebrity Tim Roller has been using the Extinguisher deer calling system for the past 3 seasons. Let's go take a look and see how Tim has been using this great system to his advantage.
A number of sounds and communications that you can throw at a buck is virtually limitless. If you hit a nerve with him and it might be a different tone, you're going to get a response from him. I'm able to do that with the Extinguisher. We've had situations where we're sitting over standing corn, hit the Extinguisher, and the corn erupts. We've called bucks off of does. We've been calling at one buck and had multiple other bucks respond from different directions, all from simply giving a few calls from the Extinguisher. One of the simplest, lowest cost items you're going to take into the woods is this Extinguisher, and it's going to pay for itself 10 times over the first time you use it. I can guarantee you, if you have an inferior call and you've got a big buck that you're watching and you're not able to get him in, you'd pay thousands of dollars for an Extinguisher at that moment. That's why we carry them right there. This tool is going to allow you to use the rest of your equipment. As a production, we have to put deer on the ground. And to do that, we have to get deer close. We rely on the Extinguisher to make that happen for us. An hour and a half almost into the morning, we had yet to see a deer. And I knew we had to be in a good spot here. And I specifically turned around, looked at my cameraman and said, you know, I'm gonna make sure that a buck didn't come in on us and we don't know that he's close. I'm gonna hit the Extinguisher a couple times. I hit the Extinguisher about 5 or 6 times, rotated around and made sure that call got out in every direction. I no longer put it in my pocket. It wasn't 30 seconds and I heard footsteps in the creek. I turned and here is this beautiful, big, mature, heavy-bodied buck crossing the creek and coming right into the call.
Tell me when you're good. Right. That's a slob. That's a pig. I pulled out my Extinguisher. Thank you, Mike, JJ. I pulled this out, grunted about 5-6 times, put it in my pocket, and it wasn't 30 seconds. And I heard a deer walking across the creek right here.
He is by far the biggest bodied whitetail I've ever had, over 300 pounds 28 hours later when we put him on a scale. An absolutely huge monarch of a whitetail. The Extinguisher grunt call allows me to have my best chance no matter where I am when I'm chasing big bucks. You need to carry the Extinguisher.
The Extinguisher reproduces the full range of whitetail deer vocalizations. You'll recreate the fawn, doe, or buck in an instant. Most calls must be taken apart to change sounds, but the Extinguisher allows you to make quick adjustments in the heat of the moment when you don't have time to waste. Why risk spooking game with a locked-up reed or unnatural notes produced by other calls? The Extinguisher's precision monoslide guarantees you a perfect note every time without any guesswork. The Extinguisher's flexible throat tube will produce incredibly natural sounds that even the most intelligent bucks cannot resist. Sound like one specific deer or an entire herd of deer with a flick of a finger. You've made unexpected sounds that have spooked deer in the past. Don't let that happen again. The Extinguisher works only when you want it to work. Hundreds of independent field testers from the North American Hunting Club gave the Extinguisher deer calling system an unprecedented 99.6% approval rating. Has your deer call ever locked up during that crucial moment from ice or excess moisture? Not anymore. Illusion's Monoslide feature allows you to free that stuck reed in a flash and with minimal movement. Illusion's patented Monoslide technology, found exclusively on the Extinguisher, glides up and down the reed assembly, giving it the wide range of tone and volume unmatched by any other call on the market. Bleats, balls, groans, growls, and roars, grunts, pops, and more. You could expect to pay well over $100 for all the calls you'd need to produce the vocalizations packed into the Extinguisher. Why spend all that money only to fumble with multiple calls when the Extinguisher does it all? Quantities are limited. Don't miss out on a chance to bag that trophy buck this year. Order now while supplies last and get the Extinguisher deer calling system by Illusion with free breakaway lanyard for just $29.99 plus shipping and handling. Get unparalleled performance at just a fraction of the cost. Order now, and you'll also receive Illusion's in-depth instructional DVD seminar featuring Olympic gold medal archer Rod White. In this hour-long communication clinic, you'll learn how to produce each and every deer vocalization on your Extinguisher deer call. This incredible DVD also features live deer footage to demonstrate each piece of the deer language. In addition, Illusion and the Schaffner family would like to offer you the late Gabe Schaffner's World-Class Whitetails DVD seminar. In this commemorative DVD, legendary bow hunter Gabe Schaffner shares the hunting secrets that have allowed him to harvest over 5,000 antler inches of record book whitetails throughout his deer hunting career. This world-class whitetail seminar is not available anywhere else. But hold on, we're not done yet. While supplies last, we'll include a free, unscented wind checker. Know exactly where your scent is traveling at all times when calling in that mature buck. This $100 value is yours for just $29.99 plus shipping and handling. The Extinguisher deer calling system makes the perfect gift for friends and family. Wouldn't it feel good knowing you helped a special someone harvest that trophy of a lifetime? The Extinguisher is not a mass-produced product. It is a handcrafted deer calling system that is 100% made in the USA. Quantities will be limited for this season. Get yours now.
As an outdoor enthusiast, I'm always looking for the newest, most innovative products to hit the market. So whether you're a hunter or looking for a gift for the outdoorsman in your life, check out the field-proven and tested products by champion hunters at isnoutdoors.com.